Right. Yes, VBS was awesome. My wife and I got to serve this week, and it was a great time, man. If you see Pastor Logan somewhere in the kids' hallway or in the lobby, give him a fist bump. It was a lot of work and effort from a lot of people. And in addition to the numbers that Jim mentioned, 14 children coming to faith for the first time, we had 54 respond on a kind of a card at the end of Thursday night that they were reaffirming their relationship in Jesus as well. So 68 of our students moving towards Jesus is really awesome. So it was a great week. I'm sure you saw the decorations on the video, or maybe you were here. It was a fun time. So, and now I see a lot of you guys sweating because you're like, I don't know if this guy can preach. So we will answer that question one way or another by the end of this. So I don't know, you tell me when we're finished. No. But I'm excited to be continuing in our series on John. Last week, Jim did a great job talking about water. So I'm just going to talk about water a little more. We're just going to keep the theme going here. Last week, Jim talked about living water. Jesus met the Samaritan woman at the well, and he gave her not something she could drink necessarily, but a living water that radically and completely changed her life and the lives of those around her. So today I want to talk about maybe a little different type of water. A water that for centuries people have sought after, they have crossed oceans for, they have traveled miles and miles, but not a water that they can necessarily drink, and not because they're thirsty, but because they are desperate to be healed in some shape or form or cleansed. See, all over the world, there's these bodies of water, these hot springs or pools or rivers that people think, due to local legends or historical accounts, that there's a healing property in this water, that if they can just touch the water, that they'll be healed. So I was looking up, some of these locations. There's a few famous ones. There's the Sanctuary of Our Lady Hot Springs in Lourdes, France, which is a Catholic hot spring. The Ganges River in India is said to have healing properties. There's sacred wells in Ireland that Christian pilgrims have visited for centuries. There's hot springs in Iceland and Japan, and there's a pool in Turks and Caicos. There's all kinds of bodies of water. Jim was even telling me in Denver there's some hot springs that people seek after for healing. And it kind of says something about the human condition. When we are broken, when there is something wrong with us, we're seeking healing. We are seeking wholeness, something that will make it right. And today I want to turn our attention to John chapter 5. If you want to follow along, I'll be reading the New Living Translation, but feel free to follow along. It'll be on the screen as well. Starting in verse 1, John chapter 5. Afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bethesda with 5 covered porches or colonnades. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on these porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, "Would you like to get well?" "I can't, sir," the sick man said, "for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets there ahead of me." Jesus told him, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk." Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. Now, this is a really cool passage of Scripture. You've probably heard it before, of the lame man. So the man in my text said he was sick for 38 years. Some texts say lame. This man had some sort of degenerative physical illness that prevented him from being able to walk. And it says that he's been suffering from it for 38 years, which is a long time. And this is probably one of my favorite books, but also one of my favorite sections of the book of John, where Jesus starts these wonderful miracles. He heals the lame man here. Not to spoil it, you still have to come back for the later sermons, but he heals a blind man. He raises a man named Lazarus from the dead in chapter 11. This is a really cool section of Scripture. But today, we see Jesus heal a lame man who had been sick for 38 years. Now, for a long time, biblical scholars and archaeologists, I can't even say that word, that's all right. They thought that the pool of Bethesda that John writes about was just some sort of literary device or like an analogy that John used. We didn't really believe that it was a real place. In fact, the legend of the Pool of Bethesda is not even considered in a lot of our modern Bibles. The manuscripts that we get a modern Bible from, that we translate a modern Bible from, don't include a verse, actually. I want to do a counting lesson with us all. So if you have your Bible, get out your Bible. We're going to count the verses in John chapter 5. Now, maybe some of you this won't work, but if you have NLT or NIV, let's go. Start at number 1, and then 2, 3, and then 5. Now, I'm not a teacher, but my mom is a math teacher, and I'm pretty sure number 4 goes there. And so if you look at the tiny little section down in the bottom that you might skip over a lot of times, you'll see a verse that is included in just a couple manuscripts giving the legend of this pool, that an angel of the Lord would come down and stir the water of the Pool of Bethesda. And the legend has it, the first person to get in the pool would be healed of whatever ailment or illness or sickness that they were suffering from. And so we just kind of thought that this was a legend, but 20 years ago or so, we actually found the Pool of Bethesda. We found the 5 porches, not me personally, but an archaeologist, and it was just as John described it. However, there's no historical actual account of someone being healed, and yet we see that people still hoarded to this pool, as they do all of these magical healing bodies of water throughout the world. It reminds me of the story from early on in college, my freshman year. I camped out at a GameStop, bear with me. I camped out at a GameStop on Black Friday for an Xbox, and now if you've never done this before, they have, it was a great sale, and so they put a sign on the door. It's like, we have 10 Xboxes at this location. So, we get in line, and we all, we have our chairs and blankets and whatnot. So there's 10 of us, and we're like, all right, sweet, we're all 10 getting an Xbox. Well, this guy shows up later on in the night, and we're like, oh, sorry, dude, you're number 11. Like, there's not an Xbox for you. He's like, oh, no, I'll stay. There's going to be one. And we're like, you might be crazy, because there's not going to be an Xbox for you. So this dude camps out with us, and, at 6 a.m., doors open. They give out these little tickets for the Xboxes, and the dude's ticked off because he didn't get one. And we're like, you knew you weren't going to get this, and yet you still came and you waited. Same thing here. No one's actually been healed at these waters, and yet, for some reason, we are drawn to come to this place and seek healing. So I want to turn back to the text, and the first thing that I notice is that Jesus sees who nobody else notices. John paints this picture of blind and lame and paralyzed people all around these porches around this pool, and I have to imagine there's lots of people, lots of desperation, and most people probably are just walking by, yet Jesus stops at one man. By the time that Jesus arrived, this man had been suffering for 38 years. He's probably watched generations of others be carried to the pool, and somebody helps him in, and they don't get healed, and he's probably watched this cycle over and over, and at some point, a person like this who's suffering and in the same condition, in the same location for so long, probably just becomes part of the scenery, to be honest. He stops being someone with a story and someone that people notice as they walk by, and he's just part of what you see when you walk through the sheep gate. It reminds me of, you have that stack of junk in your car, and you bring it into the house because you're going to clean up your car, but then you sit it on the kitchen counter, and you're like, I'll get that later. And, you go to bed, you forget it, it's all right, we'll get it tomorrow. And then a couple days go by, and a couple weeks go by, and then like 4 months later, you walk into your kitchen, and you're like, oh, I didn't even remember that I put this stuff there. Like, it'd become part of the decor, it'd become part of the scenery. And that's what the lame man here has become, just part of the scenery at the pool. And something interesting to me is that Jesus deliberately and intentionally moves towards the lame man in our story. He doesn't just stumble upon him or accidentally, trip over him, but in a crowd full of people all needing healing, Jesus specifically finds the man referenced here in our text. And that really shows us the character of Jesus today. Regardless of what is going on around you, Jesus is seeking each of us out. He is seeking each of us to heal us, to have relationship with us. Even if everyone else around us has, considered us part of the scenery, Jesus is still seeking us specifically. And some of you guys might know what it feels like to be the lame man, to be the person that everybody is kind of forgetting. But I just want to tell you this morning, Jesus is still seeking you. He is still seeking you for your healing. And then after finding the man, Jesus asks a question with what I would say is a very obvious answer. We see in verse 6 and 7, Jesus says, "Would you like to get well?" And I don't know about this guy, but like if I had been sick I haven't even been alive for 38 years. If I'd been sick for 38 years and laying here and, Jesus knows that I'm sick and this dude walks up to me and he's like, "Do you want to be healed?" Well, yeah, obviously. But what's interesting to me is that the man does not answer that way. Instead of saying yes, he actually doesn't even address the question that Jesus asks him. Instead, he launches into an explanation of why he hasn't gotten into the water yet. No one's there to carry him, and whenever the water's stirred, somebody else gets in ahead of him, and he hasn't been able to get into the water yet, which I guess is understandable, but it's also not an answer to the question that Jesus is asking. Jesus asks a yes or no question, but the man gives him this excuse as to why this answer wasn't possible. Instead of saying yes, the lame man gives an excuse. Instead of saying, "Yes, I want to be well, heal me, Jesus," he starts talking about this pool that he's been longing to get into. And I would say this pattern can show up in our lives. Oftentimes our circumstances prevent us from being well. They become excuses as to why we are not healed yet. If someone was to ask you, maybe, "Do you want to be well in your marriage?" Instead of saying yes, you might say, "Well, you just don't understand what the other person has done to me." Or, "Do you want to be well emotionally?" But that's just the way my brain is wired, and there's just no way I'd overcome that. Or, "Do you want to be well after what's happened to you?" "Well, man, you just don't understand what's been done to me. There's just too much for me to overcome." And so many times our circumstances can become an excuse. Now, I want to stop for a second and say the circumstances that we encounter as Christians, even as non-Christians, if you don't know Jesus, we are going to encounter hard things in life. And I want to validate in this moment the fact that the obstacles you encounter in life, the difficulties are real. Just because you're a Christian, I don't care if you've been to church every single week since the day you were born, you are still going to encounter hardships. But I would say that there is a line between your circumstances being something that you're trying to overcome with the help of Jesus and your circumstances becoming this excuse, this reason that you're stuck, and you hide behind it maybe. So this morning, maybe this is a difficult question. I want to ask, why are you not well? What's preventing your healing? If we look at the text, I would say there's kind of three things that stick out to me as to why we might not be healed. Maybe for some of us, the wound has become your identity. Just like the lame man, when you're in a painful place or encountering this struggle for long enough, that struggle or that pain starts to become who you are. It becomes what you tell yourself. It becomes what you tell other people about yourself. It's the lens through which other people might see you. That part of you, that identity, is how you make decisions in life. And really, healing would require a brand new identity. And that's difficult for us to even comprehend, a brand new identity. It's so hard to imagine that we don't even ask for it. Others of us, maybe you don't have community to sustain the healing. I think this might be a common one among us. If you see verse 7, the lame man responds to Jesus, and he says, "I have no one to help me into the pool." And that could be relatable. This man has been sitting here at the pool waiting, surrounded by all these other people who maybe have a friend that can help them into the water. But for 38 years, this man has had not a single person in his life or even walking by that is willing to help him get to what he thinks is going to heal him, to get into the pool. And so, isolation isn't just an emotionally damaging thing for us. It really can keep us stuck because I would say that our healing is always going to require the involvement of someone else in our life at some point throughout the process. We, as human beings, our intrinsic, our basic design, we are designed to be in community with other people. We are not designed to live life alone. And your healing, I would say, is going to be sustained or it's going to be prevented based on the community that is around you. Your healing will be sustained or prevented based on the community that you are in. And so for some of you, perhaps you do feel like the lame man. You don't have someone. Maybe you're even showing up to church, but you keep people at arm's length and, you're convinced that I will get through this myself. I don't need the help of other people. And let me just tell you right now, you're wrong. I'm sorry, but God's desire for each of us is to live in community with other people. And the first step towards your healing might be to just let somebody in. Might be to join a group or a team where you can do life with other people and share in your struggle with other people. And maybe some of us aren't isolated. We have a strong community, but there might be people in our lives who we know are isolated, people in our lives who maybe we don't know their struggles, we don't know what they need healing from, but we can tell they're isolated. And instead of us looking, like the lame man and just passing by, I would say that someone like that would be an invitation for us as the hands and feet of Jesus to reach out and to bring them into community, to bring them into our church or a group or your home, whatever it is. Invite those people in your life that you see do not have community in, because that is going to be able to help them heal, to help them accomplish things that they could never do on their own. This really reminds me, when I was a senior in college, it was August, it was before I went back to MVNU, and my friend Colton calls me and he says, "Hey, you should run a half marathon with me." And I don't know if you've seen me or you know me, but I don't have a runner's build. I'll just say that. Running does not give me supreme peace and enjoyment, but it's August and this half marathon's not till April. So I have ultimate confidence. I'm yeah, let's do this half marathon thing. Let's run it. We'll train all fall and winter, and then April come. It'll be so easy. We've been running for 8 months, and it'll be great. So, fall comes, and I was pretty good at the whole training thing when it came to the 1 or 2 milers. Those were easy. They were creeping up 4 and 5 miles, and it's all right. And then we get back from Christmas break, and it's January. And I know we have a lot of snowbirds in our church, but if you don't know, in January in Ohio, it's actually really cold, and it snows a lot. So for me, personally, I prefer the comfort and the warmth of my bed at 6 a.m. versus putting on a toboggan and a face mask and gloves and long johns and then going for a 6-mile run at 6 a.m. That's just me. Maybe some of you are really into running in the freezing cold, and God love you for that. But for me, that was not going to happen. So I was in August, this half marathon thing, it seemed like a great idea. I was full force running ahead, but man, now that it's 12 degrees, I think I'll just stay in bed. But my friend Colton is very persistent, and he would physically wake me up, and he'd be like, "We are running right now. We are going out and we are running." And I was like, "Oh, okay, fine." So through the community that was around me, it was not going to happen if it was just me. I can tell you that right now. There was no chance. But through the community around me, I will have you know, I did run a half marathon. Now, will I ever do it again? No. But I did it once. I've got the medal to prove it and everything. But really only because of the people around me that were calling me forward, that were pushing me forward. And that is what I think God designed us for, and what he wants for us is to have community around us that is going to help propel us forward in our healing to accomplish the things that he has set out for us. And thirdly, and this one, stay with me, I think the proverbial pool in our lives oftentimes feels safer than the alternative. And what I mean by that is we organize our whole life around our version of things, our plan, our goals. Like for the lame man, his whole life was focused on getting into this pool. It wasn't getting healing, it was getting into the pool. And he didn't even consider what alternate routes that he could take or that someone could take him through. And sometimes I think we do the same thing. We remain at a pool in our lives where we have this goal that we're waiting on because we think that once we achieve this or once this happens to us, then we will be whole or we will be healed. And really, we're not actually taking steps towards our healing because we have this crutch. If I could just get that job, then the financial situation for my family is going to be completely okay if I just get that job. Or if I find the right person to date, then I'll stop feeling lonely. Or if I come to church every week, my life will magically get better. And hear me, I'm not saying don't come to church. I want you here. We want you a part of this community. But if you just show up expecting God to just magically change your life, it requires investment on your part. It's not just a magic thing that's going to happen. It's not like these healing pools that actually don't heal you. You're not just going to step in and be healed. And so even this space can become a pool, this thing you're leaning on, this goal that you have that you say, if I just achieve this thing, if I get this thing, if I make it to this point, then I'll be healed. And can I just tell you that there's not a magic job, there's not a magic person or place or situation that is going to magically fix everything that's wrong in your life. It's just not going to happen. So if we can be honest with ourselves about these pools that we have in our life, I would like to turn and look at what Jesus did with the lame man's pool. You see, Jesus didn't give the lame man what he asked for. If we look at the text, the lame man was so focused on making it into the water that he didn't even answer Jesus' question, yes or no, do you want to be healed? Jesus approached him, he initiated this conversation, he asked the question, and really what the man described underneath all of these explanations is he was asking Jesus to help him make it to the water. I don't have somebody to carry me. I can't make it first. He's really asking Jesus, will you help me get to the water? Because that's what's going to heal me. And he really put a ceiling on the healing power of Jesus, a ceiling on his hope for his own healing. But what did Jesus actually do for the lame man? He doesn't offer to help him get to the water. He doesn't clear a path. He doesn't help him hobble down to the water. He actually completely ignores the pool. He bypasses this system that the man had set up, this idea that if he can make it to the pool that he'd been clinging on to for 38 years. And Jesus simply and directly says to him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. That simple. The lame man had put a ceiling on God's ability to heal him. He didn't ask for healing straight up because he didn't even believe it was available to him. After 38 years of being in this condition, at sitting at the edge of this pool, I think that you and I would be in the same boat, that no one's going to just come around and heal us of this illness. Our hope is in the water. And his imagination for the healing had narrowed down to this single possibility to make it into the water at the right moment before anyone else. And that is what will lead to his healing. But Jesus blew past everything that the man had believed his healing would look like. And he offered a supernatural solution to a worldly problem. And that is what Jesus does. Jesus is operating in the supernatural, and our brains cannot even comprehend the solutions that Jesus can offer to the problems that we face in this world. And oftentimes, we do the same thing. We put our hope in a specific outcome. We organize our entire hope and goals around this outcome, and we lose the ability to see any other path. The job that we want is the only job that's going to fix our financial situation, or the relationship we desire is the only relationship that is going to be able to make us stop feeling lonely. This one thing that we have set our hearts on, that we think is the best possible version of our life, that is the only thing that we can even imagine. But the good news is for us is that Jesus is not confined to our imagination. Our hopes and our dreams and our earthly goals cannot come close to the plans and the purposes that Jesus lays out for us. He didn't come and he's not in relationship with us to help us get the thing that we wanted. He's not here to help us get into the water of that pool that we think is the goal. Instead, Jesus is here and he is asking us, do we want to be healed? You know, in my own life, some of you, if you don't know, I graduated from MVNU with a ministry degree, and really for me, I felt like my calling was that I was going to serve in a local church. You know, I'd have a full-time job as a pastor in a local church, and so graduating college, that's what I was looking for. You know, I had interviews and I was talking with pastors and such, and these doors just kept closing. And for me, like that was hard. And those of you who don't know, I took a job right out of college at MVNU in the admissions department. But for me, like my whole concept, my whole hope for what my ministry was going to look like was a full-time job in a church. And so I really couldn't even see myself carrying out what I thought was my calling in this place. And if I'm honest with you, this really led to a long time of me being angry at God, because you know, I thought that God was preparing me for this thing, but then he didn't give that thing to me. And that didn't make sense to me. You know, what I, would say I knew this is what God wanted for me was a pastoral role in a local church. You know, that was my hope. And one of the coolest things over the last few years of my life is God kind of resetting this expectation and revealing to me how perfect his will is, even in despite of the fact that I actively was not trying to pursue it. To be able to impact people at MVNU in this transition from high school to college for the kingdom, but also working here at First Naz part-time and being able to have an impact in that way. This is not something that I would have said, right out of college, this is like what God is calling me to in ministry. And yet, this season of my life has taught me so much about relationships and people and about the character of God and about ministry in a place where I honestly did not think that I was going to be able to actually do ministry. And the thing is, what Jesus gave me was actually not at all what I asked for. It was actually directly opposite of what I asked for. But the cool part is that Jesus' will is better than mine. And his will is better than yours. And so, Jesus is standing here asking us today the same question that he asked the lame man in the pool. Would you like to get well? He's not asking us, do you want to get into the water? Do you want that job, or do you want to reach that goal that you think is going to make you all better? He's not asking that. What he's asking is, do we want to be well? And some of us, maybe you've been at the same spot for years. You've been praying the same prayer. You've been carrying the same excuses as to why you haven't been healed. And somewhere along the way, intentionally or not, you have narrowed down your version of healing into one specific outcome, and likely that outcome is what you want. And so my question for us today, would you give up your pool so that you can be healed? Jesus sees you in your struggle, in your sickness, in your doubt, in your hurt, and he's not walking past you. He's seeking you out. He knows the struggle that you've encountered. He knows what you're going through, and he wants to help you. But what he's offering is not the solution that you want. I can tell you that. What Jesus is offering each of us is true healing. And so today, I want to say that healing in our lives starts with our prayer changing from, God, would you please help me get this thing that I want? Would you please help me get into the water so that I can be healed? Our prayer changes from that to, Jesus, I give up my pool. I give up the goals that I have, the plans that I have made for myself. And instead, I'm trusting in your plan. And that really is what it means to let Jesus be the actual ruler of your life, to submit your life fully to Jesus, to surrender control of your life. It means you have to let go of the things that you want, or the things that you think will be best for you, or the things that you think are going to heal you, you have to give them up. You can't come to Jesus with all this stuff in your hands. You have to let it go. So today, this is what it means. It's trusting in what Jesus has for us. It's giving up what we think is best. And right now, Jesus is standing right in front of you asking, would you like to get well? Let's stand and pray together. God, we are so thankful for your movement among us as your people. And we are so thankful for your invitation. We are so thankful that you seek us out in the midst of our struggle, in the midst of our pain, in the midst of our hurt. You know us. You understand what we're going through. And so, God, today, would you allow us to submit our lives to you? Not just something we say, but truly, would you allow us to give up everything it is for us, our goals and our ambitions and what we think is going to be best for us? Would you allow us to lay it at your feet so that we can encounter your true will for our lives? Reveal to us here and now what it is that you would have for us, God. We know that you are constantly calling us to things, to next steps, whatever it looks like for each individual. I don't know, Lord, but you do. So would you make it apparent and plain to each of us what it is that you would have for us, God? Would you just allow us to enter your presence open-handed, nothing in our hands, God, just seeking after your will. And it's in your name we pray.